The year is 1861. A nation forged on the ideals of liberty and equality finds itself on the brink of self-destruction. Brother turns against brother, a nation divided against itself. The American Civil War, a conflict so cataclysmic, so pivotal, it would forever etch itself into the very soul of a nation. This is their story. For decades, the seeds of discord had been sown. The issue of slavery, a festering wound on the nation's conscience, had steadily driven a wedge between the North and the South. Economic disparities, political ideologies, and social values further deepened the divide. The election of Abraham Lincoln in 1860, a man who had campaigned on a platform of preventing the further expansion of slavery, proved to be the tipping point. Secession, once unthinkable, suddenly became a palpable reality. The issue of slavery, always simmering beneath the surface of American life, reached a boiling point in the decades leading up to the Civil War. The South, with its sprawling cotton plantations and reliance on slave labor, saw any attempt to restrict or abolish slavery as a direct attack on its way of life. The North, on the other hand, was rapidly industrializing. The abolitionist movement, fueled by moral outrage and religious conviction, gained momentum in the North. As the nation expanded westward, the question of slavery in the new territories became a political powder keg. The Missouri Compromise of 1820, a fragile attempt to maintain equilibrium, admitted Missouri as a slave state, while simultaneously admitting Maine as a free state. The Fugitive Slave Act, a particularly contentious component of the compromise, required citizens in free states to assist in the capture and return of escaped slaves. The Kansas-Nebraska Act of 1854, which allowed for popular sovereignty, allowing residents of territories to vote, on whether to allow slavery, further ignited the flames of division. The Dred Scott Supreme Court decision of 1857 sent shockwaves through the nation. The 1860 presidential election proved to be the breaking point. The newly formed Republican Party, united in its opposition to the expansion of slavery, nominated Abraham Lincoln. Lincoln, while personally opposed to slavery, campaigned on a platform of preventing its further spread. Southern Democrats, deeply suspicious of Lincoln and the Republican Party, threatened secession if he were elected. When the votes were tallied, Lincoln emerged victorious. South Carolina became the first state to secede from the Union on December 20th, 1860. Within weeks, 6 other southern states followed suit, forming the Confederate States of America. The secession of the southern states hung heavy in the air. Hopes for a peaceful resolution were dashed on April 12, 1861, when Confederate forces fired upon Fort Sumter. Lincoln called for 75,000 volunteers to suppress the rebellion. In July 1861, near Manassas Junction, Virginia, the two armies clashed in a chaotic and bloody encounter. The Confederate Army, led by General P.G.T. Beauregard, routed the Union forces. The Battle of First Manassas exposed the harsh realities of war. The Civil War witnessed a technological revolution in naval warfare, most dramatically illustrated by the clash of the ironclads, the Monitor, and the Merrimack. In March 1862, these two iron-plated behemoths faced off in the Battle of Hampton Roads, Virginia. The Merrimack, a Confederate ironclad, had wreaked havoc on Union warships. The Union's answer was the USS Monitor, a revolutionary ship designed by John Erickson. The clash marked a turning point in naval history, signaling the end of wooden warships. While the Eastern Theater often captured the headlines, the war in the West proved equally crucial. The Mississippi River became a key strategic objective. In February of 1862, Union forces under Ulysses S. Grant captured Fort Henry and Fort Donelson in Tennessee. The Battle of Shiloh, fought in April 1862, proved to be one of the bloodiest engagements of the war. The Western Theater also witnessed the rise of William Tecumseh Sherman, known for his aggressive tactics. The Civil War, initially fought to preserve the Union, gradually transformed into a struggle for emancipation. In 1863, Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation, declaring slaves in Confederate-held territory to be forever free. By war's end, over 180,000 African Americans had served in the Union Army and Navy. The 54th Massachusetts Infantry Regiment gained renown for its bravery in the assault on Fort Wagner, South Carolina. Their service and sacrifice challenged deeply ingrained racial prejudices. The summer of 1863 bore witness to a battle that would become etched in American memory. Gettysburg. Robert E. Lee led his Army of Northern Virginia into Pennsylvania, seeking a decisive victory on Northern soil. The battle, which raged for 3 long days, unfolded across rolling farmland and around a small hillock known as Little Round Top. The first day's fighting saw the Confederates push the Union forces back through the town. The second day witnessed desperate struggles for control of key positions like Devil's Den and Little Round Top. On the third day, Lee ordered a massive assault on the Union center known as Pickett's Charge, which ultimately failed. Section 2. A Proclamation of Hope. The Emancipation Proclamation. As the armies clashed at Gettysburg, a different kind of battle was being waged in the heart and mind of Abraham Lincoln. The weight of war, the staggering loss of life, and the persistent calls for emancipation from abolitionists and radical Republicans weighed heavily on him. He knew that the institution of slavery, the very cancer that had divided the nation, could no longer be ignored. On January 1st, 1863, Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation, a document that would forever alter the course of American history. The proclamation declared that all persons held as slaves within the rebellious states are, and henceforward, shall be free. The Emancipation Proclamation was more than just a legal document. It was a beacon of hope for millions of enslaved people, a promise that their freedom was inextricably linked to the Union cause. It transformed the war from a struggle to preserve the Union into a fight for human freedom, a crusade against the sin of slavery. While the proclamation did not immediately free all enslaved people, it did have a profound impact on the war effort. It allowed for the enlistment of black soldiers into the Union Army, adding much-needed manpower to the Union cause. It also served as a powerful moral condemnation of slavery, rallying international support to the Union side. Section 3. Turning the Tide in the West, Vicksburg, and the Siege of Chattanooga. While Gettysburg marked a turning point in the East, the war in the West continued to rage with its own share of pivotal battles and strategic maneuvering. The city of Vicksburg, Mississippi, perched high on bluffs overlooking a bend in the Mississippi River, became a key strategic objective for the Union. Control of Vicksburg would give the Union complete control of the Mississippi River, effectively splitting the Confederacy in two and cutting off its supply lines from the West. Ulysses S. Grant, after a series of brilliant maneuvers and hard-fought battles, laid siege to Vicksburg in the spring of 1863. The siege, which lasted for 47 days, became a test of endurance for both sides. Confederate soldiers and civilians alike endured relentless Union bombardment and dwindling supplies. Grant's relentless pressure and the deteriorating conditions within the city finally forced the Confederate commander, General John C. Pemberton, to surrender on July 4th, 1863. The fall of Vicksburg, coupled with the Union victory at Gettysburg just a day earlier, marked a turning point in the war. Later that year, in November 1863, Union forces under Grant's command broke the Confederate siege of Chattanooga, Tennessee. The Battle of Chattanooga, fought in mountainous terrain, showcased the growing prowess of the Union Army and further solidified Grant's reputation as one of the Union's most capable commanders. In the spring of 1864, Grant, now in command of all Union armies, embarked on a campaign to capture Richmond, the Confederate capital. He faced his Confederate counterpart, Robert E. Lee, in a series of bloody battles in Virginia's Wilderness region. The battles of the Wilderness, Spotsylvania Courthouse, and Cold Harbor, fought in dense woods and tangled undergrowth, proved some of the most brutal of the war. Grant, though suffering heavy casualties, pressed his advance relentlessly, pinning Lee's army down and slowly grinding down Confederate resources. The siege of Petersburg, which began in June 1864, became a protracted struggle of trenches, artillery duels, and bloody assaults. Both sides dug in, creating elaborate fortifications that stretched for miles. Life in the trenches was a nightmare of disease, boredom, and the ever-present threat of death. While the battles in Virginia raged on, General William T. Sherman embarked on his infamous March to the Sea, cutting a swathe of destruction through Georgia and capturing the city of Atlanta. Sherman's march, though militarily successful, proved controversial due to its brutality and the destruction it inflicted upon the Southern civilian population. The war, once characterized by grand battles fought in open fields, had devolved into a brutal war of attrition, a grim testament to the resolve of both sides and the human cost of the conflict. By 1864, the Confederacy was teetering on the brink of collapse. Grant's relentless hammering in Virginia and Sherman's scorched earth campaign in Georgia sapped the South's ability to wage war. Confederate soldiers, depleted by casualties and desertions, fought with desperation, but the tide had turned. Sherman's march to the sea left a scar across the Confederacy, cutting a swathe of destruction from Atlanta to Savannah. His troops tore up railroads, burned crops, and seized supplies, aiming to break the South's will to fight. Meanwhile, Grant pressed Lee's army in Virginia, leading to the siege of Petersburg. The siege of Petersburg became a grinding war of attrition. In April 1865, Lee abandoned Petersburg and Richmond, signaling the end was near. The end, when it came, was surprisingly quiet. On April 9th, 1865, Robert E. Lee surrendered to Ulysses S. Grant at Appomattox Courthouse. The terms were surprisingly generous. Soldiers could return home with their horses and personal belongings. Officers kept their sidearms. No mass trials for treason. The Civil War claimed over 620,000 lives. The nation began healing and reconciliation. On April 14th, Lincoln was assassinated by John Wilkes Booth. Lincoln's death cast a pall over the victory celebrations. Rebuilding fell to Andrew Johnson, Lincoln's successor. Reconstruction was a complex and contentious chapter in American history. The American Civil War, a conflict born of deep-seated divisions and fought with a ferocity that shocked the world, left an indelible mark on the nation and its people. The echoes of those battles, the stories of courage and sacrifice, and the enduring legacy of slavery and emancipation continue to shape American society. The war brought about the end of slavery, reshaping the social and economic landscape. It also led to the expansion of federal power and the affirmation of the indivisibility of the Union. The ideals of liberty and equality found their fullest expression in the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments. Yet the scars of division and the struggle for true equality continue to resonate in contemporary America. The Civil War serves as a stark reminder of the fragility of democracy and the importance of dialogue and compromise. The American Civil War stands as a testament to the enduring power of ideas and the responsibility to strive for a more perfect union.